And as I said, we have to read these 8 pages to give us clarity on what this is all about. Because federalism is created by the Constitution. Constitution created what is called dual sovereignty. So in order for you to understand, because currently there is no understanding, so we have to read these 8 pages. You have to delve into scholarship. So here we go. Cooperative federalism, how the states of the Union are separate, distinct, and foreign to the United States. Things are not as they seem in American history and law. Most often, people speak and write as if America is one country operating under one government that has plenary authority throughout a single nation. Most often, people speak and write under the notion that any government in America, whether it be local, state, or federal, is all part of one gigantic system. The federal government is often described as both a national government and a central government. It is sometimes described as an umbrella government over the states. Conversely, the states are typically described as regions or subdivisions of the United States. History textbooks in school and colleges, newspapers, and common circulation, and other forms of media tell stories that lead one to believe that federal law supersedes state law because federal law is the law of the land and nation, and thus state law must yield to the higher authority. The problem with all of this is that none of it is accurate or true to our American heritage. Every one of these positions is based on an assumed premise that is false. The result is that the American people are deceived regarding the proper role these governments are to have in their lives and acquiesce to government requests when the agents of government have no lawful authority to make the request. From its beginning, the federal government was designed to be a government of limited jurisdiction for specific enumerated purposes and not one of plenary jurisdiction over all of American society. The passion for individual liberty the founding fathers had is reflected in the design of the federal government as a government of limited authority that would not interfere in the lives of Americans, but would promote and protect personal liberty. For decades, we Americans have been slowly, unwittingly, and nearly imperceptibly surrendering our unalienable rights to our federal government in many ways. This has allowed that government to grow into a huge unwieldy machine in its behavior back towards the citizens of the states. In turn, each of the states exercise power over its people not authorized by fundamental law. Those in control of the machinery of government seem to be more interested in building the empire of government than in protecting and promoting the personal liberties upon which American society was founded and upon which it has flourished. Because we have lost sight of the nature of the relationship between the federal and state governments and the limited authority each possess, our individual rights and liberties have been trampled on. Americans are routinely coerced into doing things that fundamental law does not require, and both property and freedoms are being threatened and lost. This essay is a brief outline of some of the legal aspects of early American history, the stepwise progress of how the United States government came into existence, the relationship between the states of the Union and the United States government as recorded in historical documents and court cases, and how it all applies to us today in the principle of cooperative federalism. I will show that the states of the Union existed before the United States government, that the people of the states created the United States government as a federal government, not as a national government, and that the United States government has limited authority within any of the states of the Union.
That's right.
I will provide, in summary format, the dominant features of cooperative federalism as it is designed to operate in the American experience. My purpose is to expose the fallacy of the assumed premise that the federal government is superior to the states of the Union, that federal law supersedes state law, and that the United States of America is one nation. Of course, this has strong implications with respect to the issues related to federal authority within the 50 states of the Union on any topic of law. I began by establishing the context and setting the foundation as to why the states of the Union are nations and how they are separate, distinct, and even foreign to the United States. I understand the disbelief and frustration many folk display with the position I express when I say that the states of the Union are separate, distinct and foreign to the United States. When I first began my search for truth in this legal jungle, my mind was clouded with the rhetoric of the history textbooks and media jargon. I believe that fundamentally, the disbelief is based on the popular notion, which this current generation has very effectively been taught, the rhetoric that the United States is one nation under God, when in fact the United States of America is a collection of nations banded together for a common purpose. Because historians, politicians, journalists, and others are fond of referring to the massive American society as a nation, it is not well understood that the federal government has only limited authority that is separate, distinct, and foreign to the states of the Union. That the United States is separate, distinct, and foreign to the states of the Union is the basis for cooperative federalism in America and is a most fundamental part of our history and law. And it shows up in myriad ways which we often overlook. To understand this, one needs to go back in time to gain an overview of these issues. Colonies become sovereign nations. Prior to the Declaration of Independence, there was no general government among the colonies connecting one colony to any other save the relationship each had to the British Crown. Each colony was established according to the terms of its own character, and its officials answered directly to the British government accordingly. The Declaration of Independence sought to terminate that relationship for each American colony. And while the Declaration was worked out in a general Congress with representatives from each of the colonies, it did not create a general government nor a formal confederation among the newly declared states. One moment, where I lost my spot.
Right here. See my cursor?
All right. The Declaration of Independence begins with a statement regarding the authority of government to exist and claims that this authority is founded on God's approval and on the consent of the governed. The authors continue to cite truisms about the nature of man and society, but offer not the slightest legal basis for any of their declarations, claiming rather that their statements are self-evident. The majority of the document consists of a listing of claims that the king had abused the colonists by heavy-handed ways. All this builds to the final paragraph where the Declaration for Independence is actually made. This culminating paragraph sets out the nature of these newly declared political claims to wit. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assemble, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, I, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. The Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776. The Declaration of Independence does not portend to create a single nation. If it did, its name should be the State of New Britain, or the State of America, or the State of the New World, or any other name representing a single entity. But the proper name of our political arrangement is in the plural, not the singular. Also, the Declaration of Independence did not create a name for this alliance of American states. That came 2 years later after the Articles of Confederation. At that time of the Declaration, these American states were united in purpose and actions to be free and independent of British rule first, perhaps, but free and independent of each other as well. By referring to Great Britain as a state, this paragraph tells us that the founding fathers understood a state to have the same status as any nation on the world scene. It is common to refer to Great Britain as a nation or a country, but most Americans are surprised to notice that Great Britain is a state. The first legal document in American history uses precisely that language. Under international law as well as American law, the word state and nation mean exactly the same thing. Each state in our union has its own constitution, its own land over which it exercises jurisdiction, its own citizens, its own legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government, police powers, prison system, and military. Both the state's militia and the National Guard are under the control of the governor of the state as commander-in-chief. At the inception, each of the states issued its own money and had tariff laws which operated on the importation of goods from each of the other states as well as from states outside of American society. Of course, if we start to think about it, we hear from time to time on the news today about the state of Israel as well as the periodic gathering of the representatives of the G8 states or the G8 summit. These G8 states are not Tennessee, New York, California, or other states of the Union or subdivision of some larger entity. These states are the industrial and economic powerhouses of the world: France, Great Britain, Germany, Japan, etc. These nations are identified at the United Nations as member states. Thus, it is perfectly within the proper usage of the terms state and nation to conclude that the Declaration of Independence created not one, but 13 brand new nations or countries. The U.S. Supreme Court stated in the case of the Cherokee Nation versus the state of Georgia of 1831 that the terms state and nation are used in the law of nations as well as in common parlance as importing the same thing. The state of Delaware is a nation, the state of Pennsylvania, the state of Jersey, and the state of Georgia, all nations. The state of Connecticut is a nation, and so on. Each of the newly declared American states is on a nation that is separate, distinct, and foreign to each other, the others, as well as all other nations of the world. So the claim to a change in status of being equal to the state of Great Britain, as opposed to being a dominion or canton of the British realm, was precisely what led to the American Revolution, and it is the character which all states of the Union possess. It is popular in some quarters today to think that Congress has the authority to create states, but that notion is not true to our history and law. Notice the following explanation in Chisholm versus Georgia of 1794 from the U.S. Supreme Court. And it reads, a state does not owe its origin to the government of the United States in the highest or any of its branches. It was in existence before it. It derives its authority from the same pure and sacred source as itself, the voluntary and deliberate choice of the people. A state is altogether exempt from the jurisdiction of the courts of the United States or from any other exterior authority, unless in the special instances where the general government has power derived from the Constitution itself. The question to be determined is whether this state, so respectable and whose claims soar so high, is amenable to the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of the United States. This question, important in itself, will depend on others, more important still, and may perhaps be ultimately resolved into one, no less radical than this. Do the people of the United States form a nation? By that law, the several states and governments spread over our globe are considered as forming a society, not a nation.
There you go.
Y'all see that? So, and this is Chisholm, as I said, versus Georgia of 1794. Now here, the U.S. Supreme Court informs us that our political arrangement of cooperative federalism does not make a nation, but rather a society. So that while the people of the several states share many things in common, each state retains its national character and political independence. Just a few years later, the U.S. Supreme Court further stated in a landmark case dealing with the authority of a state to levy a tax on the operation of the United States within the state of Maryland. And it stated, no political dreamer was ever wild enough to think of breaking down the lines which separates the states and of compounding the American people into one common mass. McCulloch versus the state of Maryland, 1819. How times have changed. As we look around today, it appears that many political dreamers have been wild enough to attempt exactly what the Supreme Court justices in 1819 never dreamed could be possible. But it is historically and politically incorrect, as well as contrary to the determination of the U.S. Supreme Court, to refer to American society as a nation or a country. It is proper to refer to the American political alliance as a society. The alliance that made the United States of America. At the Declaration of Independence and the call to arms that immediately followed, it was widely believed that the colonists could not prevail against the British military power unless patriots throughout the states were to work in concert with each other. To bring about such cooperation, the Articles of Confederation were proposed in 1778, 2 years after the Declaration of Independence was made. And the loose association that characterized the general cooperation among the people of the states began to change as the newly declared nations began to ratify the Articles of Confederation. Article 1 is the first instance where the American Confederation was formalized with a title which named this alliance, the United States of America. Article 2 preserves the sovereignty and independence of each state to wit. And we're told that sovereignty doesn't exist. Okay, Article 1, the style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. Article 2, each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence in every power, jurisdiction, and right which is not by this confederation expressly delegated to the United States and Congress assembled. That's the Articles of Confederation of 1778. And through those Articles of Confederation, the founding fathers recognized that each state was sovereign and independent of each other, and that while the Declaration of Independence expressed the collective will of the people of the American states united in purpose and action, that document did not attempt to create a single unified government with one jurisdiction. It merely recognized the several governments that were already in existence. And it did not create a federal government. Here can be seen that the United States of America is an alliance of nations that are separate, distinct, independent, and foreign to each other, and do not make one nation under God, as stated in the Pledge of Allegiance, which was written many years later, like in the 1950s, right? About 54, 56. But anyway, the United States of America is an alliance of nations whose people have banded together in a political pact for a common, not national purpose. The United States of America is a confederation of sovereign states, not a consolidation of subject states into a single nation. This relationship is not just an interesting fact of history, it is current law. The index of the California Family Law Code, established in 1994 for the entry foreign law, directs the reader to the statutes regarding extradition. There, one will find annotated references to foreign jurisdictions. Interestingly, cases from Ohio, Pennsylvania, Missouri, and other states of the Union are the only cases referenced as foreign law. The index to check that out. The index to the California Education Code for the entry in laws has the subheading Death in Foreign States, Leave of Absence, and references EDUC 44985. The only language in that code section that comes close to supporting the concept of foreign states is the phrase out of state travel.
Out of state travel.
Thus, anything outside California is foreign to California. And since all the states in the Union have the same status with respect to each other, this principle applies to every state of the Union.
Right.
Each state in the Union is separate, distinct, and foreign to every other, as the laws of one state do not operate within the borders of any other state. While the Articles of Confederation were proposed in 1778, they were not ratified by all 13 states until 1781, mainly because of issues involving the status of Western lands. Upon ratification, Congress was authorized to survey the Western Territory by the Land Act of 1785. And the Ordinance of 1787 provided for the government of the Northwest Territory, the first territorial government created by the United States. So that's the first territory. And that Northwest Territory stated in 1787 that slavery was illegal. So when the Moors mentioned the 13th Amendment, I don't know why. The Northwest Territory Ordinance precedes the 13th Amendment. Yeah. So why are you using amendments? Nevertheless, I'm going to continue. Because this land was not within any state, it was under the collective control of all the states of the Union through Congress. This model has been used by Congress and later the federal government throughout American history for establishing territorial governments in any of the territories belonging to America. There are currently 22 such territories. A complete list of these can be found in the Domestic Mail Manual. The most notable among these are American Samoa, Guam, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the Northern Mariana Islands. Just as the Northwest Territory did not have its own sovereignty, so these territories do not have sovereignty. Why Congress? Why did the founding fathers choose the name Congress as the name of the political body where the representatives from the several states would meet to work out their differences? They could have called their meetings a parliament, an assembly, a forum, a convention, the United States legislature, or possibly something else. But why did they select the name Congress as the name for their meeting place?
Black's Dictionary.
4th edition, 1951, Congress in international law. An assembly of envoys, commissioners, deputies, etc., from different sovereignties who meet to concert measures for their common good or to adjust their mutual concerns. In American law, the Legislative Assembly of the United States is composed of the Senate and House of Representatives. That's in the Constitution under Article 1, Section 1. Congress, the legislative body of the United States, is a place where representatives from different sovereignties, the sovereign states of the Union, meet to work out problems for their common good. Thus, the very word Congress has embodied within it the concept that the sovereignty of any one state is separate, distinct, and foreign to the sovereignty and jurisdictions of every other state in the Union. However, while the Articles of Confederation recognize that Congress, the solutions proposed and agreed to there were not binding on the states, and each state was left to decide what extent it would comply with the solutions worked out in Congress. And although historians love to refer to this arrangement as a weak central government or a weak national government without the executive and judicial branches of government, in reality, there was no central or national government that applied to the states collectively. Wow.
There you go.
It was only a forum where issues could be discussed and solutions proposed, and it was up to the states. It was up to the states to accept, reject, or modify the solutions as each in its sovereign wisdom saw fit. The Articles of Confederation served to keep the states bound together in union, but they did not make the states subservient to Congress. Now, the United States, a federal government, on September 17, 1787, 11 years after the Declaration of Independence and 9 years after the Articles of Confederation were first proposed, the Constitution for the United States of America was proposed and subsequently sent to the states of the Union for ratification. This document, the U.S. Constitution, upon ratification of 9 states, accomplished by the vote of New Hampshire on June 21st, 1788, created the United States government as a federal government with limited enumerated authority. Without this document, there would be no United States government as we have it today.
Okay.
Neither the U.S. Constitution nor the U.S. government were operational within a state just because 9 states in the Union had ratified the document. Only upon its own ratification of this document did the state cede the limited authority to the United States government for this federal government to have even limited authority within that state.
Right.
Neither were the non-ratifying states permitted to participate in any federal functions without this ratification. Perfect example, neither North Carolina nor Rhode Island participated in the first presidential election of 1789 because neither state had ratified the Constitution.
Okay.
Check that out. North Carolina ratified on November 21st of 1789, and Rhode Island ratified on May 29th of 1790. And without this ratification, the new United States government did not exist for these states, even though they were both members of the American Union pursuant to the Articles of Confederation.
Wow.
These are what you call receipts, Moors. These are receipts. Okay, the U.S. Constitution did not create a central government nor a national government over these 13 nations. The purpose of this new government was to form a more perfect union, not a nation. The words nation and national do not appear in the U.S. Constitution. Sorry, Moorish nationals. The word nations, plural, is used twice. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 and 10. But in both instances, it is used in reference to geopolitical powers outside of American society. The U.S. Constitution could not bring into existence a national government because there were already 13 sovereign nations in the American League of Friendship. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition of 1968, sets out the distinction between a national government and a federal government. A national government is the government of a whole nation, as distinguished from that of a local or territorial division of the nation, and also as distinguished from that of a league or confederation. A national government is a government of the people of a single state or nation, united as a community by what is termed the social compact and possessing complete and perfect supremacy over persons and things so far as they can be made the lawful objects of civil government. A federal government is distinguished from a national government by its being the government of a community of independent and sovereign states, united by compact.
Compact, yep.
So it says that the government formed by a community of states is not a national government. So how we've been hearing y'all say it. Y'all call yourselves state nationals. So how often we say it wrong, rather than calling this new government a general government, central government, or national, one more page, come on.
Okay.
Or national government. The U.S. Constitution does not provide a specific name, title, or style for the new federal government. It would be more accurate to refer to the federal government as a coordinating government. The role of the federal government is to coordinate various responsibilities among the states of the Union. To this extent, and for the purpose only, the states delegated some of their authority to the new government, which is called the United States government by common convention. However, they specifically withheld authority from the United States government for those things not specifically delegated to it in the U.S. Constitution and preserved that relationship in the 10th Amendment as part of the Bill of Rights. The U.S. Constitution calls for the United States government to provide for a common defense, not a national defense, a common coin, not a national coin, regulation of interstate commerce to establish post offices and post roads throughout the states, and other things that are stated in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which is the Commerce Clause. It was given a territory, the District of Columbia, that was separate from the states of the Union because it was to be foreign to the sovereignty of any state and not under the jurisdiction of any single state. The United States government is to be the agent of the people of the states and is not the same entity as the United States of America, which is the alliance of American states And the United States government was formed to serve the community of American states. And that's it on that. So, for those who say that the state citizen is an error, that you're not a state citizen, you still consider yourself a foreign citizen or a Moorish national or a Moorish consulate, please come up here and defend your position. If you disagree with any of what we've given you here on this piece. And did you have anything you wanted to elaborate on going with that?